Hey everybody, hope you are doing well today. My name is Pastor Barry Ginn, and we want to thank you for being with us. We are continuing our This is the Bible series. We are in the book of Job. We will be looking at chapter 38 through 42. And my guest today, the one, the only, Pastor Gage Haveri.
Yes, sir. Glad to be in the house today.
Glad to have you with us, man. Long time coming. I know you're used to being on the other side of the camera, so we got you on this side.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes.
It'll go great.
Yeah,
it's gonna go great.
I'm excited. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that I get to share this with you, and we are transitioning from basically what we have had for 37 chapters.
Literally.
Right. Oh man, this has been a ride for Job. And so we are going through chapters 38 through 42. So again, if you're just tuning in now, we have a lot of videos out there, a lot of sermons you can go back and look at. So I encourage you to get as caught up as you can. But in Job 38, all the way through Job 41, so you got a handful of chapters, God exclusively is speaking. And there's only one little section in there where Job has his time to shine. We're going to take a look at that when we get there. But just to kind of give a quick overview, these few chapters that we cover, 38 through 42, are basically broken down into two different sections. In Job 38 through chapter 40, he talks about his creative and sustaining power in creation. And he just goes through, all of the stuff that he has oversight in. That's section one. And so in the second section, which is Job 40 through 41, Job has been questioning God quite a bit, and God responds to that. God, questions Job's condemnation of him and tries to justify himself. And so we kind of start out there. So, chapter 38. What are some things that you got from that, Pastor Gage?
Over the past 35 chapters since Job chapter 2, God has been directly absent from the whole situation.
Yeah.
And so we read nothing of God's direct role in comforting or speaking or sustaining Job in the midst of this crisis. And so over that time, Job, he has reached out and he's asked God for a word, and God had been silent. So, we get to this chapter 38, and the Lord, he answers Job. And I think it's significant to point out that God did not immediately, he didn't answer Job's friends. He didn't answer Eliphaz, Bildad, or Zophar, and not even the young friend Elihu. He answered Job directly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just, as we started off, that's just a key point there.
No, yeah, absolutely. I wrote down, in 38 verse 1, then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, and what a way to answer. It's like he didn't.
Out of a whirlwind.
Which Elihu talked about. He says, yes. I see a storm. It is coming.
Yeah.
And it was God. And he showed up in the, voicing through a whirlwind. And I put this note down. I put, so God does show up and he answers Job out of the whirlwind. And this whole time this stuff has been going on, Job is wanting to be proven right, that he is blameless, and he wants an answer to why he's going through all this suffering. Job's friends, they want to be proven right. They want Job to acknowledge you're sinful. There's no other reason why someone would be going through everything that you're going through. God shows up and answers, but he answers neither one of them. Neither one of them are right. God basically says, I am right. And I put this point down that a lot of the times I think where maybe some of our frustration comes in is that we trust God to do what he says he'll do, but we want a hand in how he does it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Job wants an answer. He trusts that he'll get one, but he wants a hand in how he's answered. Yeah. He wants God to show up and just smite the three friends and vindicate him. Job's three friends want, God to show up and just have Job cower before God and repent and confess and all of this. And he does neither. And I know personally that that's been a pretty familiar struggle of mine is, God, I trust you for these things, but here's how I want them. Here's how I want you to bring them to pass. You know what I mean?
I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah. And that's, man, I mean, you are definitely when you follow Christ, your faith and your trust in him is going to be built.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't promised, he's promised that he'll do things, but has not promised how.
Yeah.
At all. And so, I like how the rest of this is kind of broken down. In verses 4 through 11, God questions Job basically concerning, Job's knowledge of creation. Like he's basically sitting back going, if you are wise enough to question how I do things and how, my justice and how I carry things out, then let me see if you're qualified. If you're qualified, then I'll answer every question you have. But let's look at your prerequisites. Let's see how qualified you are. And so
who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you, Job?
Yeah. I mean, oh man, I don't want to get ahead of myself because there's a good part coming up. But yeah, he basically, who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Like you don't even.
Is he talking about Elihu there? Because Elihu, who was the one that was speaking before that, was he speaking?
I have seen commentary that suggests that. I think it's one of these things where when you read Job's responses to his friends, it starts out where Job is directly addressing, Eliphaz or Bildad or some or so far. But when you keep reading the chapter, it's almost like the attention goes from the friends and it goes to God, and he's kind of like talking to both. I think he's directing it towards Job because it says, then the Lord answered Job.
Okay.
But I think it's also like, hey, Elihu, Zophar, Bildad, Eliphaz, y'all pay attention too.
Listen in.
Because this is probably applicable to everybody here, but I'm directing it at Job because he's the one that has called me into question. But in 4 through 11, God questions Job concerning his knowledge of creation and the earth. And he I basically summed it up through this. Since you don't know how the earth originated, you are disqualified from commenting on how it is governed. Thank you, Job. If you can't tell me simple things about how this stuff is, how it came to be, then you have no right to tell me how to govern it.
Yeah.
And we're going to get deeper into that as we keep moving along. But
the intention of the questions that God asked, I think it's kind of obvious that Job was nowhere to be found when God laid the foundations of the earth. And God he's ancient in his power, wisdom, and might. And Job, he could never be considered to be on the same level as God. God is essentially saying, Job, if you can answer these things, then you are fit to question me. If you cannot answer these things, then you have no place to demand answers from me.
No, not at all. And I think in God's responses to Job, he's not giving him responses to enlighten him, to give him knowledge. I think he's giving him responses to awaken him, to show him, brother, there are you're in this category of you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I were to give you the answer, I would have to explain the answer and then explain the explanation to, it just goes so far beyond us. I mean, he's, oh my gracious.
I think this is one more small thing, and this is the nerd in me, but it just reaffirms Genesis 1-2, because when he said that he laid the foundations of the earth, it just reaffirmed that he is the creator of the heaven and the earth. It was just another thing to back that claim up.
And I love speaking on I love talking about creation. I love how in Genesis 1 where it's just in the beginning there was God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes the author doesn't take any time to explain how he got here. It's just he's so great and far beyond. Let's just say he was here.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't even tell you.
Sure.
All this built-in existence of him. It's too great, too wonderful. You work your way through chapter 38. I mean, he expounds on so much. In 16 through 18, he's asking Job, we've covered how creation got here. Do you know about sources of water? Do you know where they come from? And without giving him a chance to respond, he just keeps diving in 19 through 23. How about light and darkness? Do you know where they came from? Not necessarily how they operate. Do you know where they originated? Keeps going. I'm like building up to something here. 25 through 30. Let's talk about rain and flood water. Did you create the pathways for those to make it to earth? And when it overflows, do you have a pathway for it to maneuver? Nothing? Okay, so 31 through 37, let's test your astronomy and meteorology. Let's talk about the universe for a little bit. And I mean, but I'll bring this up at the end. Yes, he's going in, but I'll probably just repeat it. He's not crushing Job.
No.
He's not crushing him. He's not,
He's reminding him.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the three friends that are sitting there also listening to this, I think if they get the sense that God is just absolutely railing Job, they'll probably be like, see, I told you. Look how angry he is. Job did something. Even though these are very direct and seem very sharp, I don't think it was done ill will. I think it was also very loving. Like it's easy for me, like because I know how I respond when I get angry, and sometimes I put that, well, when God gets angry, this is how he probably responds. I don't necessarily think God is up there going, where were you when I where were you? Like, just I view it personally as,
hold on, do that again.
I don't like, where were you when not created? I think it was more like a father to a son. I think it was Job. You've called a lot of things into question, but buddy, do you understand how rain hits the earth, and when there's a little bit too much of it, it needs a pathway to exit so people don't feel the repercussions of that? Like, do you control that, buddy? I do. Like, I have an actual active hand in how this stuff works.
Yeah.
I think he's just like gently, I mean, we're not there, but I just feel like he's gently reminding him. But then he dives into animals, and I put this down. So he finishes out chapter 38, and basically the entirety of chapter 39, he talks about, he's going through zoology. I mean, he's just going through animal after animal after animal. I think there's like maybe 10 different ones he mentions. But to kind of sum all that up, here's the specific things that God says. He asks Job, can you provide food? Can you provide food for these animals? Can you make sure that they give birth and everything happens as it should? Can you ensure their freedom? Like there are like wild donkeys that need to be out roaming around. And then right after that, he talks about a wild ox. He talks about like whenever these wild animals act in an out of ordinary way. Can you give the donkey its freedom, but can you take a wild ox and make him be a productive member of your farm? Because I can. And the last thing he talks about is flight. Now, these things seem like absolutely random, but when I was reading through it, the one thing that kind of jumped out was God not only cares about, but he is actively involved in the most minute details of our life. I mean, it's easy to look at. I mean, we could take a look at, animals I put a verse down, Luke chapter 12, verses 22 through 24. And he said to his disciples, I love how it says disciples, because it's the believers, because we need to be reminded of this too. Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens, birds, flight. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouses nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than birds? And I think this is just how I see it. I think this is, yes, a sharp response by God, but also a reminder of, Job, I make sure that lions eat. I make sure that birds can fly and have a path to fly. I make sure that the donkeys are able to go free, but the oxen are subdued enough to help work out on farms. If I put that much, first of all, I put that much care and detail into animals, things that you would never even know to question. And if I do that, how much
much
more
more
do I put
Yeah.
into you? Like, I know you feel forsaken, and for 35 chapters, you haven't heard me speak. But, brother, I have never left you.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I brought this out in one of our Wednesday night things. Yes, you've been suffering, but Job, you've also been enduring.
Yeah.
I've brought you this far. Like, if my hand had not have been with you, like, you think it can't get worse, brother, it can get much worse. And so I that's just what I see in all of that is Job being reminded by God that he is in absolute control and has a hand in every single detail, no matter how big or small. And if he does it for animals that we won't even think about,
Yeah.
how much more is he going to do it for us? You know what I mean?
Yeah, if I had to sum those 2 chapters up, and I had to put myself in Job's shoes, I can imagine how humbling it would have been just to be reminded of who God is and what He's done and what He's actively doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just I think we've said it almost in every chapter to kind of be a fly on the wall to kind of see what's going on there, like to hear God respond that way. Yeah, He came in a whirlwind, but
I don't think it was a power. I mean, it was powerful, but it wasn't a.
I don't think it was fearful to the point.
Yeah, fearful. That's a good word.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's so chapter 40. We keep moving right along, and
Behemoth.
the behemoth. We're going
Behemoth.
to talk about that in a minute. We're going to talk about old behemoth and Leviathan here in a second. But so chapter 40 starts out, and Job has his chance.
Yeah.
Job has his shot. Verse 3, then Job answered the Lord and said, that was pretty much what he said. I am reminded, I'll say this first. So Job almost comes full circle. So just a little reminder. In Job chapter 9, verse 14, Job says, how then can I answer him?
Yeah.
Like talking about giving a response to God for these things. How can I answer him?
Yeah, how can I?
Well, then he gets a little bit more emboldened, I guess, by this. And in chapter 13, verse 22, he says, I will answer him. Mm-hmm. I will answer God. More time goes by. I think I don't know what's going on in the heart of Job, but in chapter 31, verse 37, he says, like a prince, I will approach him. Very confident that, man, I'm just going to approach God and I'm going to respond. And then after 2 chapters, God gives him a chance, and Job basically says, not only do I not know what I'm talking about, I need to keep my mouth shut.
Yep.
And it reminds me of the famous quote from Mike Tyson before he fought Evander Holyfield. Everyone has a game plan until you're punched in the mouth. And Job, for 30 chapters, has had a game plan. And then God very lovingly punched him in the mouth. Boom. And he has nothing.
Nothing at all.
But like we talked about, these responses from God are not to give Job information, is to enlighten and awaken him.
It. Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Yeah, I have nothing to say now.
Yeah, it's just to pull the curtains back.
Yeah. And man, what a way to pull the curtains back when you show up inside of a whirlwind. But yeah, so we start talking about Behemoth. Real or mythical? What do you think?
Well, I don't think God would say I created something if it was mythical.
Yeah, he literally says.
He says I created.
Verse 15, behold Behemoth, which I made.
Yeah.
As I made you.
So
we get into like technical things now. So yeah, I don't think it's mythical at all. You know, just from passages we have right here that it was an actual creature. What's your guess as to what Behemoth was? You have a guess?
I think it was like it talks about a creature that eats grass. So it's like some big ox.
Yeah.
Some type of big looking ox with horns.
I saw a different commentators that, thought it could be different things. One guy said he thought it was a hippopotamus. I was like, that's interesting. Okay. I could definitely see that. One thing that I jotted down in talking about Behemoth is God almost takes a sidestep and adds something in here. In verse 19, God says, he is the first of the works of God. Let him who made him bring near his sword. God talking about Behemoth. And I put this down almost like the idea with creation. If you can't determine, I think God is saying, if you can't determine why I have created an animal like this, you also cannot determine issues of justice, mercy, suffering, or anything else other than what's been revealed.
Yeah.
Like look at the complexity of this animal and what it does and how it interacts in its environment. If you don't understand that, something as simple as just creatures roaming around, how are you going to understand justice and mercy and suffering and all of these deeper, weightier matters of like the human experience?
Yeah,
you know what
good.
I mean? Yeah, I think, again, awakening Job to that there's just a whole lot more going on than what your mind can really understand.
Yeah.
So he talks about Behemoth in chapter 40, and then we hop on over in chapter 41, and another creature pops up. And if Behemoth was made by his hands, then we have to say that, Leviathan was also probably made by hands.
What do you think this is?
At first it's easy to go like the dinosaur route, depending on what you mean by the word dinosaur, but it looks, I was reading commentary and one of the commentaries said this, and now I can't unsee it, but he said he thinks it was a crocodile.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I was like, man, that is really interesting, because you have to remember, because I know, like myself, I'm like, well, there's like dragon-esque
when you read it,
characteristics to this, right? But Job is also a poetry book. And so Job is very poetic with how he explains things. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if, however many thousands of years ago this was, I'm sitting there looking at a crocodile early in the morning, sun's coming up, and he's surfacing in the water, and he just like blows, water out of his nostrils. It looks like smoke.
Yep.
And if you got the backdrop of a sun coming up, it probably does look like flames. So, I'm not going to rule out it could be some creature that is just not existent today.
Sure.
Absolutely. But, probably could be a crocodile.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to take a look at. But kind of the same thing here that they talked about with Behemoth. If you can't control or challenge Leviathan, you certainly cannot control or challenge me. You've challenged me to bring you answers. You've challenged me with why. If you can't handle a creature like Leviathan, then you can't handle something like me. Again, awakening and enlightening Job there.
I also think it's possible that God was also using Leviathan to represent Satan, and that Job couldn't contend. He couldn't compete. He had no power over Satan. And so, how could he ever hope to stand against God, who made all these monsters, Leviathan and Behemoth, and Satan, and God was the master of all of them.
Yeah.
And so there's just another effective way of setting Job in his place before God.
And even pointing on that, like it's almost this idea of, I have put this natural fear or barrier between the animals and you.
Yeah.
And if that was not there, they would just run rampant over you guys. The same with Satan. If there was not a barrier there, look at the destruction that would be caused if God's hand has not been, interwoven into keeping, him from coming to a certain point. Another point that I jotted down is, I kind of see God telling Job here through these accounts with Leviathan, and not just Leviathan, but everything we've talked about so far. If you can't undertake God's work, you have no right to undermine God's ways. If you can't do His work, if you can't do, because he tells Job, I think back in like maybe chapter 38 somewhere, like go ahead and adorn the things that I adorn. If you can handle the work, let's go ahead and give it a shot. But Job can't. He can't understand it, and if we can't undertake his work, then we really don't have a place to undermine how he's doing what he's doing. Which touches on what we talked about before. Is at times we don't really have an issue understanding that God will do something. It's the fact that we want a hand in how He does it.
Yeah,
which is difficult for us all. And then we close out in chapter 42. We're only going to look at the first 6 verses because then it kind of changes theme a little bit. But Job, he confesses and he repents. And it's 6, pretty revealing verses about the effects on Job from being answered by God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he starts off, listen, please, and let me speak. Before it was like Job wanted to challenge God. He was like ready to fight. He was like, let's go. He wrestled with God.
Yeah.
And it was a very confrontational way. And, now it's, he's had this wonderful revelation of God, and he respectfully asked God for the right to speak.
Yeah.
It was, rewarding just to read and see how he came from that spot of confrontational hard heart, and here he is now, respect and reverent.
Yeah, he's not showing up like a prince.
No, he's not.
He's showing up like a son.
Yeah.
He's showing up like somebody that, this is the father, and I need to.
I feel like there's another story we've gone through, like the prodigal son, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. We'll probably come across that every now and then. Yeah, I jotted down one thing here, and it's, it has just been circling, and I still don't know that I've got resolution to it, but it's this idea of, all right, when you read through Job, when you read through God's response, he does not directly answer Job. He does not give him a reason for his suffering, and that's what Job has been asking for the entire time. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I wonder why God didn't just go in Job chapter 38. Why didn't he just say, well, Job, a few years back, Satan came before me and wanted to know and just basically challenged me that the only reason that Job serves, you is because you treat him well, you bless him. And I wanted to show him that you would serve me and treat me well and honor and respect me, even if these things were taken away. And guess what, Job? You passed the test. Good job. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Here's everything back. The end. You know what I mean? Like, there, in some regards, there was a reason for his suffering, but God does not give him that direct response. And man, it has been just like circling and circling, like trying to go, like, why did you not just give him just like this very straight, easy answer? And I'm not saying this is the answer, but some things that keep kind of dropping down is one thing I tell people quite a bit when they ask me questions is some people give answers. I give explanations. And so I don't do very well at just short answers. Just the teacher in me just wants to explain and talk. But it's almost like this idea of a short answer will answer one question, but a good lengthy explanation will answer many questions.
Okay.
And so I think it's this idea of if God showed up and just said, Job, the reason that this happened is because Satan had a challenge. I met him. We won. Good job. Here's your stuff back. Well, then 6 months down the road, when Job has another issue, it's going to be, well, why did this happen? Well, why did this happen? Well, why? And it's just endless.
Endless cycle.
Instead, God shows up and says, I'm going to show you just how majestic and creative and amazing and beyond comprehension that I am. And this response is going to answer every question you have moving forward. When you don't have a clear-cut answer, then it's going to be, well, I don't know what the answer is, but I trust God. I don't know how donkeys go free, but oxen work on fields, but I trust God that he's got a hand in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't understand how, Behemoth and Leviathan are controlled, and he creates them, and he cares for them, and he works with them. But I trust that he does that. And it's almost like God's explanation of who he was going to be the building factor to any question Job would have now. Yeah. Even if he couldn't get a direct answer, he was going to trust that God was in control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I have a question for you then. Okay. For that person who's watching right now and they're like, man, I feel like Job. I'm going through it. I'm in that storm right now. And you know, I'm wanting that response from God. And, what would you say to that person right now?
Yeah, I would probably say I'm definitely not in a seat of trying to tell you why. That's what Job's friends tried to do. I have no idea why you are going through the things that you're going through. I could not tell you. But what I can see from this is that God has never left you.
Yeah.
God is not forsaking you. When we have questions and we don't know the answers to, I think we can find comfort in answers that we do have. What I mean by that is, I may not know why I'm going through what I'm going through, but here's what I do know. You will never leave me. You will never forsake me. You are a friend that sticks closer than a brother. If you seek me, you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. And just start going through all these passages of God is there, God is there, God is there. Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. I told a lady Sunday, because sometimes when people say that passage, there's this automatic response in the negative. And I told a lady Sunday, one of the tricks of the enemy, something he's done very well, is taken biblical truths and made them so, I guess, common,
like cliche, sure,
that we think they lose their power.
Yeah.
And so, like when someone responds, now we know all things work together for the good, we automatically turn it off. I know that verse, but no, it's true.
It's true.
It's
absolutely true.
He just went through 5 verses or 5 chapters of, here are things that you have no clue about that I have an active hand in. I have an active hand in rain falling, in donkeys walking, in underwater sea creatures swimming. Like, I have an active hand in all of this. And so while you may not have a direct answer as to why did we go through this, let's focus on the things and look at the things that we do know. God, it does not lessen God's ability to be our comforter. It does not lessen his ability or diminish his ability to be our provider. We are going to latch on to all of those things that he is, regardless of our circumstance, until one day where he reveals it to us in some way, shape, or form. And maybe the way it gets revealed is a direct, here's why. Or it might be like Job. The revelation is, it is so great and so far beyond your comprehension, you would not even understand it. And so I just need you to trust and love and put your hope in me that I am a good father. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, that's good. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. This is the Bible. I want you to remember that every word on every page whispers the name Jesus. You guys have a great week.
See you guys.